Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me again. I'm Dottie Lamro. You're tuned into the Esoteric Moon Gathering, and I hope that you're gaining some practical tools and wisdom, knowledge to take with you to navigate your inner landscape and trust your inner knowing even more. I'm excited today to have with me Ani Naqvi, and her talk is entitled 20 Years from Tsunami to Survivor. Annie is a life coach, and her holistic approach is based upon her skills, experiences, and life journey. She's an ICF accredited coach, Ayurvedic practitioner, yoga therapist, NLP practitioner, mindfulness instructor, and holistic and well-being writer. Annie is formerly a BBC journalist and head of projects for corporate charities and NGOs. She has walked in your shoes and she understands the challenges that you face. Annie, so excited to have you. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me today, Dottie.
My pleasure. I'm wondering if you can tell us about your incredible journey and how it brought you to deep inner knowing and trust.
Sure. So as you said, from Tsunami to Survivor. So 2004, I was in the big Asian tsunami in Sri Lanka on the east coast, and I nearly died there a number of times. I was caught up in the wave, and I was invited onto the Oprah Winfrey Show to talk about my story. I happened to meet a guy called Nate Berkus, who some of you might be familiar with, who was holidaying in the hotel next to mine, and I was the first person he saw when he came up to higher ground. And when I realized what had happened, I knew as a previous journalist, as a BBC journalist, that because of the location of where we were stranded because the fifth wave took out the bridge into the area that we were in. So we had no way out other than a leopard-filled jungle or a crocodile-filled lagoon. So we were trapped on this little peninsula. And I knew that given the scale of the disaster, by the afternoon, we had some indication that this was Asia-wide and it was big, that we wouldn't be able to get out of there unless we got some press coverage on our plight. And I got in touch with the British High Commission to have us rescued. So we did end up staying out that night, and then we got airlifted the following day. I got on the last chopper after making sure that everybody else had got on safely, and Nate was got on the same chopper as me. So we became very close over the following week. There's something about when you go through a trauma together and you survive something together. He lost his partner that day, and he says that when he met me, there was one thing that he always felt, somebody that we felt safe with, which was a BBC, like a TV producer, because he was used to working with producers. So we became very close over that following week. We shared a room together. We hung out all the time together. He came back on the transport with me and my friend back to Colombo, which took us a couple of days, and he stayed in my friend's apartment with us. And, we just became really, really close. And then he invited me on to Oprah to talk about my story. When I was on Oprah, I said to Oprah, I know that there was some purpose in being saved, but I really don't know what that purpose is now. I know it will become clear as I go through life. And that purpose has now become clear. But it took almost 20 years. The tsunami was 15 years ago. So it's taken like the last 15 years of my life to discover that purpose. And that has also meant I had a struggle with a severe cancer diagnosis, breast cancer diagnosis in 2010, which went on for a number of years. It's still something, because it was stage 4, it's still something I live with, although I have been in remission for the last few years. So that's really nice. But having been through all of those circumstances, I was forced to reevaluate my life, to heal myself. And I'm very lucky that I managed to do that without having chemo, I was more scared of chemo than I was of cancer itself. So I went through this big transformation, this journey. Started with the tsunami. Cancer was a big part of it as well. And I've, when I came out of the sort of cancer, and I was thinking, what shall I do with myself now? And everything I had done on myself to heal myself, like becoming, seeing an Ayurvedic doctor, or doing yoga, meditation. I then decided to learn it for myself. I thought, okay, I don't want to just go and see an Ayurvedic doctor. I want to also learn about Ayurveda and be able to heal myself with Ayurveda. I don't want to just go to a yoga class. I want to be able to deepen my knowledge of yoga. And so I became a yoga teacher, then I became a yoga therapist to deepen my own practice. When I got into meditation, I did the same thing. I didn't want to just be a meditator. I wanted to really deepen my practice. So then I started to learn about meditation and things like that. I mean, obviously meditation is part of yoga anyway, so I'd already learned that. But I embarked on about 5 or 6 10-day silent meditation retreats. So I just really immersed myself in the whole healing journey. I changed my lifestyle, my diet. I went into my mind and looked at how my mind had created my reality and how I wanted it to use it to create my healing. I looked at my emotions. So I had to do a lot of release work and a lot of forgiveness work around my parents and other things that happened to me. And I had to look at my energy and my soul and what was my spirit trying to say to me in all of this. So that's why I call myself a holistic coach now, because I look at mind, body, emotions, lifestyle, spirit, and energy when I work with a client, because we are a whole being, not just one thing. And that's how I healed myself through all of these things, was to dive in deep. And it was an often very difficult and painful experience to do all of this. But what's happened is that I've come out the other end, and I'm pretty ecstatic most of the time, to be honest. I'm very happy and content and peaceful and relaxed. And even though, I may have technically been living with cancer and things like that, I've learned to be so mindful that I really try to live in the moment without stressing about the future all the time. So I think that's been the gift that I've been given, if I'm honest. I mean, most people would be like, what do you mean a gift? But I've had so many opportunities to grow and develop, to transform myself from the person that I was to the person that I am now. And I see that with the results that I get with my clients when I'm coaching them and healing them, because I get a lot of clients that come to me with trauma, post-traumatic stress or depression, anxiety, and some quite sort of serious things that they've been trying to deal with for a number of years. And I'm very happy to say that the methods and the techniques that I use have worked very well for them. And I think that's in part all to do with, like my practices that I have, my daily meditation. I meditate. I've been meditating now for a number of years. I've gone quite deep into my practice. I work very intuitively, and yeah, I love what I do. I feel like this is exactly the purpose that I spoke to Oprah about, 15 years ago, when I sat on her couch saying, I don't know what it is. Now I know what it is. I know that this is my mission, and my mission is actually to inspire, support, and motivate 250,000 people, which is the same number of people that died in the tsunami, to activate their passion and their purpose, so they live a joyful and purposeful life in honor of those that didn't make it in the tsunami. And when I talk about that, I'm very very driven by that. And that's really important to me, to be able to help other people understand that, you know, you can go through all these very dark periods. I had, you know, I had 10 years of very difficult, traumatic time between 2004 and 2015. And sometimes I would wonder, am I going to make it out of this? Because it felt like one thing after another, after another. And I'm here to tell you that you will make it out, and you just have to have perseverance and hope. And transforming yourself isn't an overnight sensation. It takes work, it takes effort, but if you're determined to do it and to get there, you will get there.
Oh. Wow, Annie, thank you for sharing that and being so vulnerable and transparent. I know that you're doing a beautiful job of your mission and helping people heal. Yeah. Okay, so you've been through the tsunami and a serious health crisis and multiple brushes with death.
Mm-hmm.
So what, I think you touched on, excuse me, you touched on this, but what do you think that all of those experiences were teaching you, trying to teach you?
I really do believe that it was my soul, or I don't know what you want to call it, your higher self, divine power, cosmos, universe, whatever you want to call it, whatever your name is for it, was literally shoving me and saying, pushing me, right, and saying, you are on the wrong path. Get off this path. And I had a very typical London life. Okay, I worked hard, I played hard, I partied hard. This was very normal. Growing up in my 20s and 30s in London, it's a very normal part of life. All of those sort of things, and I wasn't very happy at the time. I was quite depressed. I hadn't dealt with some other stuff from my childhood and other things that had happened. And so I used to self-medicate at the weekends and just, you know, drink and, you know, take recreational drugs and things like that. And I feel like it was literally something that was going, you're not on the right path. Go over there, go over there, you know. And I kept missing the cues. So although I said to Oprah, I know that I've been saved for a purpose, I did go into working for NGOs and charities and went to Iraq even in the war to go and work for an NGO. And so it's not that I wasn't listening in completely, but it was still not quite the right path, you know. So I went from a disaster zone to a war zone like a couple of years later. And when I look back now, because I'm writing a book about my whole experiences for the last 15 years, I think to myself, gosh, that was still my post-traumatic stress that was driving me, and I didn't realize at the time. And obviously I got even worse after coming back from a war zone. So I had one PTSD on top of another PTSD on top of another PTSD. So I do believe that these experiences, so these short, sharp shocks that life was giving me, were trying to put me on the right path. I still wasn't listening properly. I hadn't tuned in to that part yet. And so I kept missing the signals. So I think then it decided, okay, we're not going to give her a short, sharp shock anymore. Let's give her a long one. So cancer, you know, my cancer journey was a 5-year journey. And, you know, and even though it got to stage 4, it wasn't that threatening because it never went into my organs or my bones or anything like that. So it was about as gentle a stage 4 as you can get. And again, I feel like it was my soul, my higher purpose kind of saying, you're still not doing it. Because it was then that I had to change. That's when I started to, you know, really, I moved out of London. I met my husband at the same time. And that's when I got into yoga, meditation, and healthy eating and exercise and all these things that I'd been not really doing very much of, you know, until then. And then I feel like, you know, then and now I feel like I'm on my path because this feels very congruent with everything I've been through. It feels so organic. And, you know, like I said, you know, my clients are raving fans and they, we have amazing results. So I feel like now I'm finally on that path, and my message is, you know, with my book, with doing these kind of interviews, is around that. It's around, you know, this, you can make a lot of mistakes before you can find yourself on the right path, and that's fine, so long as, you know, you eventually, I wouldn't wish anybody to have to go through these things in order to work that out, first of all, let me just say that. But you will be getting messages in different ways. You might not have a tsunami and you might not have a cancer diagnosis, but you'll have other little messages being dropped into you. And so it's about tuning into that, tuning into your power, tuning into your higher self, into your intuition, and then working alongside that, working with it rather than against it.
So what was it like when you started to work with your intuition, when you turned that corner?
I mean, it was amazing, you know. I mean, I remember the very first 10 day. I mean, I've been meditating for a long time now, but I remember the very first 10-day meditation that I did, which was about 3.5, 4 years ago now. And there's nothing that quite prepares you in the same way as something as deep as that. You know, I'd done a lot of 5-day silent meditation retreats until then, but I didn't have the same breakthrough that I had in that one. And in that one, I actually felt myself, the tsunami was coming out of me. That's how, like, because towards the end, towards day 7, 8, 9, and 10, you know, I started to have all this stuff come up. And it was like being in the tsunami again. It was the very full on anxiety and threat, and the survival, you know, the panic, basically, all that panic. And I really genuinely believe that everything that we go through is stored in our body, or in our mind, body, or emotions, kind of like auric place. And when we don't release those things in a healthy way, then they can turn into disease, for example. So I felt it all coming up. And when I felt it all, and I also cured myself of tonsillitis within 24 hours, within 12 hours. I woke up at 3 a.m. with tonsillitis, and I meditated my way through it. And I'd been on antibiotics 5 times already that year with tonsillitis. Okay. And I'd still kept getting it. And this time I meditated through the tonsillitis, and within 12 hours, I had not a single spot on my tonsils. My tonsils, which I woke up with golf balls in my throat, and I could not speak. You know, I was like raging fever, everything. But I meditated my way through it, and I healed myself. And that's when I understood the power of meditation, of intuition, of manifestation, because I feel like I manifested that tonsillitis as well, because I was really bored of being in the meditation retreat, and I was like, I want to get out of here. And so this was my way of getting out of there. So it's funny, the tricks that we play on ourselves, but that really proved to me everything I'd said in theory, which was that we have the power to create our reality, because I managed to to manifest an illness and heal myself within 12 hours. And then I realized that this was so powerful. And I meditated in all my spare time that I'd been messing around before, like pretending to meditate, but kind of thinking about something else. Or, you know, your mind wanders, doesn't it? And you kind of like, you know, before I knew it, I'd be watching a TV program in my head or something, or reading a book or something like that. So don't get me wrong, I'm not like a good meditator or like a very Zen person or anything, you know, like I'm like the most talkative person that I know out of my group of friends, and not the type of person that anybody would think, oh, she'll be the first person to go off to a meditation retreat. But I did. And I have to say it changed my life. And that's when I started working much more intuitively and trusting what comes up for me, and listening, and really honing that kind of skill of listening to your intuition. I'm not, obviously there's always room for growth, you know, everybody has room for growth. So it's not that I'm like, you know, that I'm there completely, but it's about discipline, daily practice, and then keep on tuning into yourself. The best way that your body knows when something's wrong is that you feel ill, or you have a headache, or you have a pain in your neck, or you have your back goes out. These are messages. These are messages from you to say, hey, buddy, look at me, what's going on? Yeah. And if we ignore that over and over and over again, eventually you might get something like, you know, a serious illness. So, I mean, that's what I did. I ignored myself for years before I started listening.
Can you, speaking of health related topics and listening to the body and how the body tells us we need to pay attention to something maybe a little more emotional or spiritual, can you talk a little bit about Ayurveda and how that might help us understand our inner landscape a little bit more?
Sure. So with Ayurveda, which is the ancient Indian system of holistic medicine, and it's actually the sister philosophy with yoga as well, because yoga was also given by the Samkhya philosophy, and they sit together in one root. And with Ayurveda, you know, Ayurveda believes that the whole of the cosmos is made up of 5 elements, including people, animals, everything. And that those elements are air, fire, water, space, and earth. And those 5 elements exist within all of us, but 2 of those elements go to make each particular Ayurvedic dosha. Ayurvedic dosha is basically simplified into English as like your personality and body type, basically. But it's so much more than that. So when we understand our Ayurvedic dosha, so for example, if you are Pitta dosha, which is made up of fire and water, then you can be more of a type A type person, a bit of a go-getter. You might be quite athletic. You like competition, maybe, you know, quite ambitious. Those kind of qualities. You can imagine with fire, that's the kind of, you know, driving force, yeah. Whereas an earth person, which is earth and water, which is Kapha dosha, they're more solid and stable, dependable. They're the kind of people that are doing the sort of quiet behind the scenes work, or the nurses or the carers. You know, they tend to be drawn to those kind of professions. And they have a different type of energy. As you can imagine, earth is more solid, more stable, more sort of like firm and stuff, you know. And so it brings those same qualities. And then the third dosha, which is Vata, which is air and space. So if you can imagine, air and space is all up here, right? So, but that means that you're you could be incredibly creative, or you like movement, or you like to travel, or a lot of Vata people tend to be musicians, artists, that kind of thing. So it's the creativity within you. So when you understand which dosha you are, the way Ayurveda works is that the dosha that you are is the one that's most likely to go out of balance. So then there are nutritional advice and meditation advice and yogic advice about, you know, different things that are going to benefit you. So if as a Pitta person, for example, as a yoga practice, you wouldn't necessarily be wanting to do a practice where you're in front of a mirror, or a hot yoga practice, because you've already got fire in you. So a hot yoga practice is going to potentially make you feel more agitated and irritable and short-tempered, because those are the signs of Pitta going out of balance. And being in front of a mirror, for example, because Pitta people already like to be competitive, you know, and a bit of a peacock, right? So the last thing that a Pitta person needs is to preen themselves in front of the mirror whilst doing their yoga practice, because it should be about going inward, right? So these are the things that one can become more conversant about when we look at our inner map and look at Ayurveda. It helps to understand what our qualities are, what are the negative sides of that thing, because obviously there's always the polarity in life, yeah, the duality of nature. So with Pitta, I've just said, you know, with Kapha, they can sometimes be very attached to old things, like, so to a relationship or to their job, or, you know, they don't want to move on. They get a little bit stuck sometimes. Or they can be quite greedy, or they become lazy. So these are, again, so a Kapha person is one of the doshas, is the only dosha that actually benefits from a dynamic yoga practice, from a vinyasa flow or an Ashtanga yoga practice, or something quite powerful. Our Vata person, which is air and space, they tend to be sort of tall and thin, or slim or short, and they have a lot of nervous energy already. Their minds are constantly going. They're kind of creating in their mind. There's lots of movement all the time. So again, for yoga with them, you wouldn't necessarily recommend them to do a fast yoga practice again, or a running, for example, because that's going to make that person feel, so when Vata's out of balance, it can make you feel anxious, nervous, you might have digestive problems, insomnia, those kind of things. So it's really about when you tap into yourself and you become very, when you listen to yourself, you'll notice that, you know, maybe running for you makes you feel agitated afterwards. Running for another person might make them feel really alive, you know. So it's all about checking in with yourself, because the doshas are a guide, but people usually are a combination of doshas. And as life goes on, we actually become the diseased version of ourselves. So we're born a certain way, which is called your prakriti, but then as life goes on, our doshas do go out of balance, and then we have something called vikriti. Most people these days have an imbalance of Vata dosha because of social media, because we're always multitasking. We're watching the TV while we're having our dinner. We're talking to a friend while we're looking at our phone. We are reading a book with the radio on in the background. You know, that we're always doing more than one thing at one time. So most of the time, most of us, okay, not everybody, but most of us. And so that means that your Vata dosha will go out of balance then, and you might be prone to more nervousness, more anxiety. You might have, you know, problems with sleeping, those kind of things. So it just is information, really helpful information on how to best live your life in the most harmonious way and balanced way for your personality and your body type.
That's awesome. Thank you. I love that. I just think Ayurveda is so fascinating, and there's so much to learn. And I love how you broke all the doshas down. Thank you. And how they are when they're out of balance. It makes a lot of sense. And that, yeah, as a society, we are distracted. That is for sure. And sometimes I'll find myself, which I'm not too proud to admit, but I'll have my computer on my lap and the TV on, and I look up and I'm like, wow, 2 screens in front of me. And then sometimes my phone. I'm like, 3, what is happening? Stop. That's time to rein it in a little bit. It's easy. It's easy to get stuck in that mode.
Exactly. I mean, technology is great for many reasons, but this is one of the negative impacts of technology in our life, is that we're constantly connected and we find it difficult to disconnect. But having a digital detox, or, you know, like at periods of time, regular times, you know, is really healthy for our mental well-being. I notice whenever I go and do one of these 10-day retreats, I mean, they say don't treat it like a holiday, because it's not a holiday, it's hard work, but it's so nice because you have to check in your phone when you arrive, so you're forced into a digital detox. Which, how many of us are disciplined enough to switch off our laptops and our phones and not check them for days on end. Very few people would have the discipline to do that. I certainly can't do that. So when I go to these things and I check my phone in, I'm like, oh, it's like you're instantly relaxed because you know you're not going to have to talk to anyone. You're not going to have to check any messages, and you're just going to be with yourself. And I instantly sleep so much better. I sleep deeper, I sleep longer, because I don't have all this stuff running through my mind.
Yeah. Can you tell us how, or maybe share some practical tools about how to light up the answers that we have within? Because I know you teach about that we have the answers within and we just have to light them up. Do you have any practical tools to share to do that?
I would say the biggest and best tool that you can use for this is meditation. You will, the amount that you will learn through your own meditation practice is indescribable. I mean, I've kind of tried to touch on it a little bit here today. When I got my stage 4 diagnosis, though, and I was like a whirling dervish, you know, like I spun out completely. I was like, oh my God, how much time have I got? Am I, you know, when am I going to die? I mean, like literally, like completely off the scale, out of my brains, panicked. Okay. I said to my husband, I said, I'm not, you know, managing this at all. Like I need something that can ground me. I could tell I need, because I was spinning up here, you know, and I was like, I need something that's going to ground me. So he took me to a meditation center in Wales. Actually, he was like, this one looks good. It's the same kind of like yoga that he used to teach, yoga meditation, like guru sort of thing. And I went, and it was just what I needed to help ground me. And I ended up doing a course there for the whole year, where I would go back every month for a long weekend for 5 days and do a retreat there. But I couldn't have got through that time without doing that, you know, and there was really nothing else that I could do, you know. It's like, what do you do with stuff like that? How do you cope? The way you cope is by meditating. Now I'm able to be very present and be in the moment. And that's, for me, the pandemic that we've been in hasn't affected me that much because I'm able to do that. And I've noticed that where people have struggled, it's when they are not able to do that. And they are panicking about the future, panicking about potentially getting it. Well, yes, you could, and that may happen, but whether or not you would get it very badly or not is, you know, these are so many variable factors. Okay. So, I mean, obviously I've been through, you know, a serious diagnosis. So I've been able to find the resilience within myself to cope. But yeah, I would say meditation is going to be your number one thing that I encourage everybody to do. And there are so many different forms of meditation that you can find one that suits you, and you can go guided to begin with if that is, you know, easier for you. But that's really going to be the way you're going to connect with your inner self and your intuition.
Thank you. It's a great answer. I know for myself, meditation has been, especially, it helped me a lot with anxiety, because I was always worried about what wasn't happening yet. And yes, just learning to become present.
Exactly. And a lot of anxiety is about worrying about the future. And a lot of depression, not all, but a lot of depression is about being stuck in the past. So we hold on to stuff from the past, from old hurts, resentments, anger towards parents, previous relationships, or people that we feel have wronged us somehow in the past. And we can hold on to that. I know I did that. You know, I was holding on to a lot of anger and resentment with my parents. And you have to let go of that, you know, and to be in the present moment. If you're genuinely in the present moment, and I'm talking about your conscious and your subconscious thoughts, okay? Because often we have this dialogue going on in the subconscious that we're not necessarily completely aware of. But again, meditation will help you to tune in to that inner dialogue and hear those little sentences of, oh, you're not good enough, or you're rubbish, or that was really bad, or why did you do that? All that kind of nagging critical voice that we all have, it can become so loud that it tunes out the other part of you, the kind of intuitive part of you. So that's another reason why that practice is going to help us to bring the subconscious thoughts into the conscious, and that's where we can change them and and make them into what we want them to be.
Very good.
Does that make sense?
So can you share with us then some powerful questions we might be able to ask ourselves to open up to our intuition and create awareness outside of meditation?
Yeah, I mean, just when you sit with yourself and quietly and just ask yourself, think about what you would do if there was no fear involved, because we are very much guided by fear a lot of the time. So our decisions are not made out of a place of abundance and trust. And, like we don't tend to not trust ourselves very much. Not everybody, obviously, but a lot of us struggle with trusting ourselves. We don't trust the universe. We don't trust God. Maybe we don't believe in the universe. Maybe we don't believe in a higher self. But this lack of trust in ourselves and in God or the universe or whatever you want to call it is the driving force behind a lot of our behaviors, our thoughts, our patterns, and our actions. So if you ask yourself the question, check in with yourself all the time. If fear were no object here, and I had, let's say, for example, all the money in the world, or, all the trust in the world, or all the belief in the world, or all this, what would be my decision then? Because if you're always thinking about fear, and it's not conscious fear, it's just that we are being driven by fear. Like, I can't spend this money because I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills next month, or I can't get involved with that person because he went out with so and so before and he had an affair, maybe he's going to cheat on me. So all these stories that we tell ourselves, but actually the universe is abundant and we are abundant, but we put limits on what we believe we can do or be or achieve. And because we put limits on ourselves, that's what we create. So we create a limited life for ourselves. So if you tune into yourself and ask yourself this question over again and again, what would be my choice, my decision, if fear were no object here? And then see where that guides you.
I love that. Very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure I would think for myself, I'd get an answer pretty quickly too. Not wonder. I think your answer would come pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Annie. Do you want to talk about your free gift?
Sure. So I have a free yoga nidra meditation that I have recorded for you and other people. Yoga nidra is a very nice meditation technique. It's a guided meditation and relaxation, but you start and you're lying down. So it's a very nice one to start with if you're a beginner at meditation, because you just lie down and you listen to my voice guide you, basically. And it's a specific process. It really helps with anxiety and with insomnia and lots of different, all the usual benefits that you have with meditation, feeling calmer, more relaxed, and those kind of things. So it's a very lovely practice to do, and that's available on my website for free for you to download as well. And I don't know, can I say what my website address is for them?
Absolutely, of course.
Yeah, so you can find that on anicoaching.com, and Ani spelled A-N-I, so anicoaching.com. And there's a little free yoga nidra meditation there for you to be able to download.
Awesome. And how about your book? Do you want to tell us about that and when we can buy that?
Sure. So I'm just finishing off my first or second draft now, and it's called The Wave That Changed My Life, 20 Years from Tsunami to Survivor. And it really just chronicles my journey in depth of what I've just been talking about, from the tsunami and my struggles with depression and post-traumatic stress, you know, having the survivor guilt after the tsunami, going to Iraq, and, you know, and then my subsequent cancer journey. But there's a little bit of, there's lightness in there as well, because it's not all oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. It's there's a lot of lightness in there. And you know, I talk about how all of these experiences are blessings for me, because I was given this opportunity to grow myself in this way, to have this mission that drives me now, writing this book to help inspire, support and motivate this 250,000 people to really activate their lives and live fully, rather than just living how a lot of people do live. We tend to kind of just coast by and you know, just, you know, go through the motions, you know, get up, go to work, you know, come home, put the kids to bed, you know, eat, sleep, and do it all over again kind of thing. But it's really activating that passion within us and that purpose within us, so that we can wake up every day and feel joyful and excited, and, you know, that we're doing something that is meaningful to us and to, you know, and contributing to the rest of the world as well, because we all want to contribute. So yeah, so my book is really that whole story, my lessons in there, and goes into all of these things in a lot more detail than I've been able to do with you in the last hour or so.
Excellent. I look forward to that. Thank you, Ani, so much. There's so many nuggets of wisdom in here, and I'm so grateful for your time with us today.
It was a pleasure. It was thank you for having me on, Dottie. It was really nice to be interviewed by you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks everybody for tuning in again, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.